Princess Bubblegum inarguably has the largest family line in Adventure Time. After all, she created a majority of the candy people, and she was born from the mother gum, one of the substances created in the aftermath of the Mushroom War. We don't have time to cover every single character in the Candy Kingdom, but today, I'm going to go over all the significant members of PB's fam. I'm Whitney Van Laningham, and this is Princess Bubblegum's Family Tree. Before we get started, I want to give a shout out to our super nerd sponsor of the day, Kevin Brown. Alright, let's set a few parameters. Like I said, I'm not going into depth about every single member of the Candy Kingdom, because, lol, we'd be here all night. But we will go over notable members of her immediate family. Also, I know she and Marcy are together forever, but I'm going to do a separate video on Marceline and her family line, so even though we love the Vampire Queen, she's not the star of this vid. Let's start with Chatsberry, the past incarnation of Princess Bubblegum and one of the 4 OG elementals that oversaw Ooh before the Great Mushroom War. Chatsberry was obviously the candy elemental. Alongside his colleagues, Urgent's Evergreen, the ice elemental, Balthus, the fire elemental, and Slimy D, the slime elemental, thousands of years before AT takes place. As the 4 of them discuss what to do about the evil green meteorite that's about to strike Ooh, Eustace and the others get into a fight about how to stop it. Chatsberry, Balthus, and Slimy D aren't too worried about the sinister magic inside the comet, but Eustace insists that the only way to stop it from colliding with the planet is to create a powerful wish-granting crown. He also claims that he's the only one who can wear it, because his deepest wish is to destroy the comet. The other elementals don't believe him, and are concerned that the powerful wish magic used to activate the crown will corrupt his mind. As they argue, Eustace freezes them one by one, rounding on Chatsberry last. Chatsberry pleads with him not to add the final rubies to the crown, warning him that its magic might cause him to discover things about himself that he does not wish to know. He fart blasts one last stream of jelly beans from his palm at Eustace, but Eustace ices him anyway. When Princess Bubblegum is struggling to shoot jelly beans out of her own hands, she was able to connect with Chatsberry in her dreams for a lesson from a pro. He teaches her to shoot scotch mints and soda out of her hands to create an explosion in battle. But Peep struggles to master this at first. Chatsberry advises her to walk in her own shoes in order to activate her powers. It takes her a minute to understand what he means, but she quickly figures out that she can use her knowledge of science and chemistry to create the soda and mints. Thanks to Chatsberry, she successfully destroys the flying ice device that Patience sent to mess up the kingdom. After the Great Mushroom War, PB's direct ancestor, Mother Gum, was formed in the ruins. They were a hive mind of gum that slowly broke off into droplets that became Princess Bubblegum, her brother Nettie, and probably other candy folk we haven't met. Peebs explains that being part of Mother Gum felt safe and secure like being inside a womb, with the added benefit of thousands of other gum minds to communicate with. We see Mother Gum for the first time in the episode Simon and Marcy, covering the ruins of the city. Simon is set on getting chicken soup for Marceline because she's sick, but the two of them run into a horde of mutant zombies before they can find some. After fighting them off, Mother Gum reaches down and hands Simon a can of chicken soup and a can opener to feed Marcy. That's the last we see of her for the next 196 years until Princess Bubblegum and Nettie are born. Bonnie is formed when a droplet of Mother Gum falls gently into a puddle below. Unfortunately, Nettie's entrance into the world is a lot harsher. His hunk of gum falls directly onto a sharp rock, and the first feeling he understands is pain. From that moment onward, Nettie is deeply terrified of the world around him. While Bonnie explores the world around her in amazement and wonder, Nettie has trouble coping with life away from Mother Gum. The only time this sweet little gum dragon finds peace is when he's sucking the roots of a candy tree, which causes him to excrete candy juices. Bonnie is the only person who can calm him down by singing their special sibling song, which consists of clicks and soft cooing. Princess Bubblegum knows that her brother is happiest when he's alone with his trees, so she builds a tower for him to live in, away from the things that scare and hurt him. He's perfectly content in his little home, until the King of Ooh decides to break in. The king realizes that the juice that Nettie produces is what allows the candy people to live prosperously in the kingdom. They use it for power, defense, recreation, and for its healing properties, all of which the king plans to monetize. But as soon as he concocts his evil plan, Nettie notices him, Finn, Jake, and the king's guard hanging out in the entryway to his room. He flees in terror, which stops the juice from being produced and flowing out to the kingdom. The king estimates that they have about a day's worth before they run out, so Finn and Jake decide to ask Princess Bubblegum to help them get Nettie back and stop the king's plan. Bonnie finds her brother hiding inside another cave, but this one has no tree. She sings him to sleep and wraps a blanket around him before transporting him back home to his favorite tree. Finn and Jake don't really understand why Nettie is the way he is, so they ask PB to answer some of their questions about her brother, like why he wants to be alone all the time, or why everything makes him afraid. Princess Bubblegum responds, "Some people just get built different. We don't have to understand it, we just have to respect it." I personally relate to this scene as a person who has a personality disorder because I feel like their conversation is a respectful, inclusive way to talk about someone with a disability or mental illness. Sometimes you might not understand why someone is the way they are, but it's so important to respect those differences, especially when it comes to the disabled and MI communities. It's okay to ask questions if you don't understand what someone else is experiencing, but the key to learning and growing is making the effort to listen and change when you learn new information. I love that Finn and Jake did exactly that. They respectfully asked PB about her brother's differences, and they accepted and respected what she told them in response. When you talk to someone going through it IRL, be like Finn and Jake. Nettie's just a dude who prefers his own company. That's actually cool as hell. Do you know how many people out there, myself included, can't stand being alone? I know that this is more on the extreme end of introversion, but sucking on his tree truly makes him happy, and I think it's badass that he loves to do his own thing by himself. Without Nettie, none of the candy people would be living and thriving today. He's actually one of the most important characters in the series, and we stan a dragon prince who gets his groove on solo. Longing for a real family of her own, young Bonnie decided to use her newly created candy life formula to make herself an aunt, uncle, and cousin. She names them Aunt Lolly, Uncle Gumbald, and Chicle, and she intends for them to do normal family stuff with her forever. Bonnie and Nettie move out of their hiding spot next to a radioactive river and in with their new fam. But Uncle Gumbald quickly starts to turn bad. He cuts down all of the taffy trees they were growing, packs up the wife and kids, and builds a cabin away from the future location of the Candy Kingdom. There, he tells Bonnie that he's going to build an apartment complex and start charging folks to live in them. His greed makes Bonnie uncomfortable. She just wanted to have a regular family structure, and she didn't want to be lonely anymore. Now her uncle is trying to monetize the land they're on. In retaliation, Bonnie creates a butterscotch bomb that explodes into a lake right where Gumbald wanted the apartments to go. He gets so mad at her that he, Lolly, and Chicle start to form a plan to take her down once and for all. After sending her out on a date with Mr. Cream Puff, he creates a potion called Dum Dum Juice that renders the person who ingests it or is splashed with it into a simple-minded candy person. Surprisingly, part of his plan included poisoning Lolly and Chicle with the juice, turning them into Manfree the Talking Piñata and Crunchy the Candy Ball. When Gumbald tries to dose Bonnie with the juice, she shoots the beaker in his hand with her pea shooter, causing it to shatter and explode all over him. He turns into a silly punch bowl, and although Bonnie feels bad for them, she decides that they seem a lot happier this way. We later learn that this is not at all true, however, and that Dum Dum Juice is a pretty terrible curse to be placed under for hundreds of years. But I'll get to that in a minute. Although Crunchy hangs out at the Candy Palace and seemingly fits in with the rest of the candy people, there's something clearly dark about him. When Finn and PB ditch their slumber party with some of the candy peeps, Crunchy decides it's his moment to seize the throne for himself. He almost succeeds and is about to throw Starchy into the crater when Finn and PB return and put the candy people to bed. Later on, when the King of Ooh successfully takes the throne away from Peebs, Crunchy manages to break free and attack him. He throws him into the fireplace and full-on murder melts the King of Ooh like a waxy lump of grilled cheese. PB eventually takes the Candy Kingdom back from Crunchy, and that's the last we hear of them until after the elementals go all wacky and start turning all of the citizens of Ooh into fire, ice, candy, and slime beings. When Lumpy Space Princess uses her lumps to restore balance to the planets and return the elementals and their creations back to normal, it also resets Gumbald, Lolly, and Chicle to their original states. And to say Gumbald is pissed would be an understatement. He immediately begins plotting his takeover of the Candy Kingdom, starting with minor acts of violence aimed towards Finn and PB's other friends. After Finn accidentally kills Fern, Gumbald scoops up his pieces and takes him back to his candy science laboratory. He's not as good as PB at making creatures, but for a guy who spent the last several hundred years lost in the juice, he's gaining skills fast. He purchases a set of Finn's baby teeth from BMO and uses them to make an army of baby Finns to attack the treehouse. Because they're made of literal baby teeth, Finn and Jake are able to destroy them pretty easily. But Gumbald takes this as a learning experience and decides to up his game. At Finn's 17th birthday party, Fern sneaks Gumbald, Lolly, and Chicle into the candy castle inside a literal Trojan horse. He pops out and explains to Princess Bubblegum how he came back to life, and that his new mission is to turn her into a simple piece of candy with dum-dum juice. Marceline manages to scare him away in her vampire form, but he returns in the penultimate episode of the series, having created his own entire kingdom called Gumbaldia. They're preparing to go to war against the Candy Kingdom, but first, Gumbald hatches a plan to dose PB with the juice to make her people more vulnerable for attack. Although he tells Finn and Jake that the war is called off, he spritzes them with dum-dum juice and tells them to give his niece a hug from him. Fortunately, his plan is foiled, but unfortunately, it's because Peppermint Butler goes to wipe the sparkles off them and gets got by the juice. He's transformed into a little baby Pep, and we're gonna see more of this little guy's adventures in the upcoming episode Wizard City in the Distant Lands miniseries. Finn and Jake also accidentally splash the juice on Cheeklay while they're trying to call off the war, and he turns back into Crunchy. PB and Gumbald are preparing for battle when Jake decides to smash the bottle of nightmare juice on the ground, causing Finn, Fern, Gumbald, Bubblegum, and himself to pass out and travel to the dreamscape. There, he hopes that the two will work out their issues, but they keep fighting. Gumbald eventually manages to juice PB, and she turns into Tiny Taffy. Although she's still capable of her own thought, the only way that she can communicate is by doing silly dances. She realizes how awful it must have been for her family to be trapped in this state for centuries. After they both cry together watching Gumbald's Candy Kingdom turn to a pile of mush, she changes her mind about him. When they wake up from the nightmare juice, Bubblegum apologizes to her uncle for leaving him trapped as a punch bowl for so long, and for not respecting his vision for the Candy Kingdom enough. He pretends to forgive her, but Lolly catches him trying to sneakily betray her with dum-dum juice and trips him. The juice smashes all over him again, and he turns back into the punch bowl. Aunt Lolly accepts Princess Bubblegum's peace offering on behalf of Gumbaldia in his absence, and the two agree to move on in harmony and unity. In the final montage of Come Along With Me, Aunt Lolly and PB can be seen singing to Nettie together while he sucks on his tree. Punch Bowl and Crunchy can also be seen found having a cold one with the boys at the tavern. Like I said up top, I can't go over all of Peeble's other candy creations, but I want to talk about her most notable ones, Goliad and Lemongrab. Goliad was created directly via Princess Bubblegum's DNA, designed to take over the Candy Kingdom someday when PB is too old to rule or dies or something. She's made from a combination of candy soup, amino acids, some algebra, and one of Peebs' baby teeth. Goliad has the power to control people's bodies and minds, and although Finn and Jake are tasked with teaching her the ways of a proper leader, she soon discovers that it's much easier to just make people do whatever she wants with telekinesis. Bubblegum realizes that the only way to stop her is to create a being of equal might named Stormo out of Finn's DNA to engage Goliad in combat for the rest of time. Her plan works, and the two are apparently still locked in a battle of the minds to this day. Likewise, the Earl of Lemongrab was another of Princess Bubblegum's failed candy experiments. He was the first of her candy people to go wrong, and instead of coming out sweet and silly like the rest of her citizens, Lemongrab came out weird and shrill and agitated. Because he doesn't get along with others, she put him in Castle Lemongrab where she thought he'd be happier, kind of like Nettie and his tree. But when her age regresses, Lemongrab returns to the Candy Kingdom as next in line to the throne. Because she's too young to rule, he takes over the kingdom. Lemongrab definitely isn't what you'd call a benevolent ruler. He's constantly yelling at and berating the candy people, and Homeboy definitely cannot take a prank. Bubblegum has to age herself back to normal in order to reclaim the throne and get him to flee the castle. Later on, Peebs catches Lemongrab spying on the candy people while they sleep. He admits that he's lonely and bored and that his life is miserable and it's all Peebub's fault for creating him in the first place. Feeling sorry for him, she tries to teach him how to be more empathetic, but nothing works. Eventually, the only thing that stops him from keeping Finn, PB, and Jake locked away in his dungeon forever is meeting his clone, Lemongrab 2. The two become instant besties and let the princess and her friends go with no hard feelings. They do, however, steal PB's candy life formula and decide to use their lifetime supply of candy that the princess gave them to create a larger and larger family. Unfortunately, a lot of these other lemons are pretty wonky, except Lemon Hope. They continue to create more and more messed up candy, even trying to steal from the Candy Kingdom to further their creations. Although they're stopped by Lemon John and have their memories of the formula wiped by PB, the two continue to engage in an increasingly unhealthy relationship. Eventually, Lemongrab devours part of his clone and grows heavier. When Lemongrab 2 releases Lemon Hope from the dungeons, Lemongrab freaks out and eats the rest of him. Although partially digested, Lemongrab too manages to help Finn and the gang escape to safety. Back at the Candy Kingdom, they start receiving weird black and white dictator videos from Lemongrab. He's quadrupled in size, and he's saying all these weird things about how great Castle Lemongrab is doing when clearly he's abusing his creations. Lemonhope saves the day by facing down the Earl and playing his harp. Lemongrab too pops out again and yanks the earplugs out of his ears while the enslaved lemon people hold him down. As Lemonhope plays, Lemongrab can't stand the music and explodes. Princess Bubblegum gathers their pieces and begins stitching them back together into Lemongrab 3. Lemongrab 3 is basically the same as the very first iteration of Lemongrab before he got all murdery and dictatory. If you want to know more about Lemongrab and his adventures, you can check out my other video all about this sour weirdo to hear his full deets. Princess Bubblegum definitely has an interesting family to say the least, and although the majority end up betraying her at one point or another, it's her chosen family, Finn, Jake, Marcy, Lady, and Pepbutt, that are there to save the day. Honestly, Chatsberry is the only fully sentient member of her family that doesn't super suck, so I'm gonna say that he's my favorite. Let me know which of PB's family members you think is the most interesting in the comments. Like and subscribe to Nerdwire, and stay tuned for more Adventure Time videos.